Wonderful. Well, welcome back to Mahamudra for the People. Today we're going to continue where we left off last week in our exploration of Shine, um, especially following Bokor Rinpoche's opening the door to certainty, which is what we're focusing on over the next, well, however long it takes to get through it. um, and so last week when I went through the initial part of the text, we began with the common preliminaries and then the uncommon preliminaries, so what we typically know to be Nundro practices, very briefly speaking, and then the special preliminaries, being the different kind of factors that are necessary for awakening to happen, and then the instructions on Shine or Shamatha. So we're going to today spend time focusing on the practice of Shine or Shamatha in two forms. So we'll continue going with anchoring the mind on an impure object, as it were, this specifically being a physical object that is in your frame of visual reference. And then later, towards the end of the session, we'll move on to practicing with a pure object, meaning a visualized object that you might develop some kind of vision of, an image, visualized image of a Buddha on the crown of your head, or a tigle, like a drop, so to speak, at the brow or at the navel or something like this. But before, just in order to kind of keep with the contemplation of the common preliminaries, we'll go through the four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma, beginning with the preciousness of this human embodiment or this birth. Taking a moment to spend time specifically focusing on all of the causes and conditions that have come together so that you can practice Dharma. And when we look a little bit, almost as if we're writing our own spiritual biography or our own Namtar, right, there is a kind of descriptive thread of what caused us to become interested in Dharma practice. And some of these reasons can be based on a class somebody may have taken, or a book you may have encountered, or an article, or a conversation, or a movie, or podcast. And whatever it was, taking time to really consider and express some internal sense of gratitude for the way this thread of continuity of interest in practicing Dharma has arisen for you. And how practice of Dharma brings a sense of meaningfulness, a meaning to our lives, to the way we consider ourselves, the way we envision ourselves in relationship to others, all of this. Calling to mind all the teachers that we've had, the physical teachers, the teachers of experience, teachers of text, enlightened word. Let all of these things come together in a unique way so as to make our life meaningful, precious. And then taking a little bit of time to reflect on death and impermanence. Everybody we know and we love at some point will be no more, including ourselves. Everything is constantly changing. Everything is moving. And no matter how hard we try to control a situation or to make something happen a particular way, right, we can't always do this. It's constant move, constant shift. All of us eventually moving to death. And this aids in making this moment, this experience of life, extra meaningful, extra vital, simply because it's a limited resource. One day, this will be entirely over. And remembering this, right? Really trying to be motivated by this. Not in a depressive way, but in a realistic way. And then moving on to karma, cause and effect. Everything that we experience is based on previous experiences, causal factors. Nothing comes from nowhere. And this constant flow of change, this constant flow of appearance, this constant flow of causal factors often means that we cannot be in charge, or we cannot control, or we cannot make happen everything that we want to make happen. And therefore, it can be meaningful and important to do away with the hubris of thinking that I control it all. I control me. I control this world. I control everything. Since waking up this morning, consider all the things that happened that were not planned. All the things that occurred that were beyond your control. And then take a moment to consider all of the large events that are completely beyond our control. Allowing ourselves to directly experience and letting these things self-liberate in the process. And then moving into the dissatisfactory nature of samsara. Samsara is not the most pleasant place to be. We suffer when we think we're in control. We suffer when we think we can be in control. We suffer when we think we know everything. We suffer when we need to know everything. And we suffer when we are the experiencer. We suffer when we are the recipient of things. It just never seems to end. And being curious about freedom, nirvana, awakening, and what it is like to settle directly into this experience of the cessation of suffering. Where does this come from? It doesn't come from Zoom. It doesn't come from TV. It doesn't come from the lottery. It doesn't come from most things. It really comes from how we shift our relationship to phenomena and ourselves. And holding these four thoughts as a way to ground us, keep us a little settled, keep us a little stable. So we'll begin the first Shine session. Each one will be 15 minutes. Set the timer. So the key aspect of this practice, one of the keys is resting into the 7-point posture of Vajrayana or its equivalent, right? Its equivalent meaning do whatever feels doable. Right? So one of the 7 points of Vajrayana is sitting with your legs crossed. If you can do that, wonderful. If not, that's okay. Do the equivalent. Keeping your hands either on your knees or in meditation mudra in your lap. Shoulders spread wide open like the wings of an eagle. Neck slightly bent. Jaw and lips relaxed. Try not to clench. Spine straight like an arrow. Neck slightly bent. Gaze slightly downward. This is how we hold the body. And then we hold the mind with a sense of easefulness, being free of the 3 times, free of the past, free of the future, free of the present, free of control, free of trying to figure anything out or making meaning. And just resting with the experience at hand. And we'll settle like this, allowing ourselves to focus on an object in our visual field. Gently hanging your attention, like hanging a sweater on a hook. Not too hard, not too soft. Just enough to allow yourself to gently anchor your attention, your awareness in this gentle way. And sit like this for 15 minutes. And gently bring yourself back. Before we go on, I want to see if anybody has any questions so far. Or thoughts or complaints. No. Okay. All right. Are people feeling calm, peaceful? Yeah. How has distraction manifested for anybody for whom they might feel distracted? Okay. Yes, Eric. Yeah.
This like impulse to make it better,
Mm.
and it's like can be so subtle, but is so sandpapery at the same time.
Yeah. 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 I find this a very nice kind of tethering, like, being somebody like tying my leash to, like a bus stop sign while they go in to run their errands, forced to just stay there. Um, it's nice. But you're right, control comes up. I'm just gonna read a section, just this basic mental attitude, the way it's translated in, Bokar Rinpoche's text. The basic attitude of the mind pointed out in these terms: do not reflect, do not conceive, do not think, do not meditate, do not analyze, rest naturally. And so, yeah, really, this is like the adult vacation practice. I have just been like, oh, I don't need to do anything. I don't need to reflect. I do not need to conceive of dot dot dot. I do not need to think. I do not need to meditate. I do not need to analyze. I just need to rest naturally. And then he goes on to say the spontaneous ordinary awareness is free of stopping and creating, free of refusal and acceptance, hope or fear, attachment and grasping to a reality. Okay. This last, grasping to a reality means we can let it go. It's okay. And it's not an avoidance, but it's you know, maybe you could say it's a relinquishment of this ethos of I need to be here so I can dot 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 dot. We can be here and forget the whole thing. That's okay. We rest in this essence, relaxed in the relaxation, without distraction, with one pointed attention, without grasping to clarity or emptiness in the non-doing. So just really being a non-covetous neighbor, not coveting experience, not coveting phenomenon. So we will do this again. Allowing yourself to get comfortable again, in whatever way is comfortable for you to achieve either the actual or approximated 7 points of Vairocana. Again, picking a very ordinary physical object as an anchor and allowing yourself to rest in this way. Again, very slowly, bring yourself back. Take a moment to shift if you need to shift. And then for this third session, we'll focus on a pure object. So pure here in this context is a visualized object. The example given is that of the Buddha. So imagining a Buddha in front of you could be, so what I see directly in front of me is a chair. So for example, I could imagine that there's a Buddha sitting in the chair. But it could be, anything, basically, in a nutshell, anything that is of significance in terms of a dharmic kind of inspiration. Could be a symbol, could be a sphere of light representing the nature of the enlightened mind of all the gurus. It's not necessarily that it only needs to be a Buddha. And if it helps to close your eyes and do this, you can do this too. Closing your eyes. Again, as best you can, settling into the 7-point posture of Vajrayana. It's said that being in this posture causes the winds to begin to settle into the central channel. My root teacher pointed out to me that both the posture causes the winds to enter into the central channel, which causes, the Mahamudra experience to arise relatively effortlessly. And so this is one of the benefits of this posture. So allowing yourself to settle this way and begin to visualize a pure object. Again, settling your mind in exactly the same way, or anchoring the mind in the same way. I will return to the text so everyone can be refreshed. Basic attitude of mind is pointed out in these terms. Do not reflect, do not conceive, do not think, do not meditate, do not analyze, rest naturally. The spontaneous, ordinary awareness is free of stopping and creating, refusal and acceptance, hope or fear, attachment, and grasping to a reality. We rest in this essence, relaxed in the relaxation without distraction, with one-pointed attention, without grasping to clarity or emptiness, in the non-doing. And again, we'll settle like this for 15 minutes. And take a moment to return. Hmm. So a little bit further on down the text, just for context, Bhumisparsha writes that by the power of meditating according to these instructions, the three stages of stability will gradually occur. And so the first is similar to a stream rushing down a steep mountain. So, meaning not very stable, right, or not very still. And the second is similar to a quiet river. And then the final stage is resting like a motionless ocean. And later we will get into these different ways of stabilizing the mind. So settling, completely settling, certainly settling, thoroughly settling, taming, pacifying, thoroughly pacifying, establishing one pointedness, and resting evenly. And so the whole point of this is to be able to, again, like we mentioned, or I mentioned last week, facility with a stable basis in Shine in particular, then makes it quite easy for the mind to become aware of itself, to become aware of its the way that it intersects with the experience of everything that arises, sound, sight, you know, texture, etc. Right, and that without, when we're in, for example, this first stage of settling, where it's just like a mountain river, it's better than nothing, right? But it makes it quite hard for insight to arise because it's so bubbling, 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 coming and coming and coming and coming. Right? And so this is where this benefit of Shine, it really kind of comes in. Obviously, not just, relating to Mahamudra practice, but everything else that we do, right? This kind of relaxed, easeful, relationship to mind where there's a lot of stillness. Not a kind of contrived stillness, right? Not like a big heavy blanket, but settled, like a snow globe that's been let to settle. That's quite nice. Quite good for you too, right? So that you're not bubbling, 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 constantly dispersing energy, being distracted by things, just settling into simplicity. So what does this sound like? How's everybody doing? Okay, yeah, Sean.
Um, just an interesting experience that I was running into, more so with the impure object. I was using like a little tea light candle, and it's just like interesting to feel this almost like very low grade or subtle fear of just like, can I really just let myself rest into the candle 1000%? Like, is the car insurance gonna call, like, or whatever? Just like these swirling mist of like low grade pervasive humming fear that I'm like, oh, that must just live in my body and mind stream. And because I'm almost trying to really internalize, like, yes, Lama Justin set the timer, it's 15 minutes, sink into the candle, like no one's gonna die. In this window, you can actually let go like 100%. And like I just feel myself slowly like chewing that and like swallowing it and being like, okay, I can like, I mean, I don't even really think of myself as having this like, I was just like encountering anxiety that I was barely aware of was there. And like, let me just be the dog at the bus stop and let me just be the settled snow globe and like it's safe. Like just this fundamental safety of it was like interesting to encounter.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, that was a really good point. Tony's hand went right up, so I want to see if Tony has a go.
Mine is not related.
Yeah,
I do vibe with that,
yeah. Okay,
but
yeah,
but
go.
it's unrelated, so please.
Oh no, I'll speak after. Go for it.
Okay, sure. I'm I'm consistently running into this experience of like um mm, it's like a stages, right? Like my mind is really bubbly and then quite settled, feeling quite settled, and then like after there's a lot of clarity, kind of toward the end of like you often do 12-minute sets, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm,
maybe around minute 10, it would be my guess. There's like suddenly a lot more thoughts, but the experience of them is quite different.
mhm.
Um uh and uh, I haven't known how to like talk about this for a while, but like um since last week, I've noticed this even after like a lot of mantra practice.
Mhm.
Um this comes up like if I'm sitting doing like open awareness after a lot of mantra, this happens.
Mhm.
Um and it feels like nice, but it's not and like fluid, I guess, but it's not like stable. It's like, well, maybe it is in a way, but it's not like it's very active. There's a lot of energy. Um yeah. So that is a kind of a stage that that very consistently happens for me. I just wanted to bring it up.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, okay.
Also, sorry, point
Yeah.
two, the impure object is so much harder for me. Like, because it feels like there's a lot more effort in generating
Mhm.
um a visualization.
Mhm.
Uh and it's so much harder to let that just
Yeah, I think you froze, Tony. Um, so I'm gonna keep going while you return. Um, yeah, I mean, so we'll go backwards. From this last point, one thing you can do, and we'll see later, one of the anchoring techniques, the next one is to focus on an aspect of a yidam practice, right? So you could, for example, do a deity's hand, imagining your hand as the deity's hand, um, or something like this, which might be a little bit easier. Hey, Tony. So I was just saying that, as we'll see in the next example of like a pure object, the next time we meet, using the form of the yidam, or you could even use their hand, right? So imagining like Vajrayani's hand, right? She has, probably some kind of fingernails going on, and her hands are a particular way. Or if we took White Tara's hand, right, there'd be an eye in it, right? And so just kind of like, even if you were to imagine both of your hands like White Tara's two hands folded in meditation, which are in your lap, and just settling on the eyes and the hand, you know. Um, So sometimes that can help a little bit better than an entire little Buddha. I tend to, for some reason, it's not that hard to like, have this visualization of a Buddha, maybe even one made out of metal, right? Like, right. So it's just one color, right, on the top of one's head. And to both your point and Sean's point, it's almost as if there's like an architecture, so to speak, or of flow, in the beginning, how easily we settle or don't settle. And then maybe we settle easily and then something kind of quips up, and then a lot of thought activity or sensation or sensitivity to environment causes stuff to happen, and then maybe that dissipates or maybe not. Kind of to your point, and then to Sean's point too, is like the I think the thing that kind of came to mind, Sean, while you were talking, was something like walking around with a fever, right? And in a real way, like we're kind of like always walking around with a fever, by constantly being in the world and all this energy, all this like, like I can look out my window and there's a bus turning a corner, and who really cares, right? That does not really matter. Right? It's not because I'm feeling negative. It's really just because like who cares, right? But there's a triangulation that's also happening sometimes, like we're shooting these little anchors, like, bus is there, person walking, sound of my wife in another part of the house, relative temperature in here, all the visual thing. And so we're like shooting these little anchors out that are all like, I'm here, here I am, I exist, all this kind of stuff. And really what we're trying to do is nothing other than let that go, right? Just not expend that energy. And so I think with both of, we know what both of you shared, there's this kind of phase of divesting ourselves or deconditioning ourselves, which just requires, I mean, this is why I will sometimes say that meditation like this, I mean, even Hatha yoga or full-blown Mahamudra, like has this relationship to the natural generation of patience in it. Because if you're just going to stay, right, that's all you can do. You can just be like, when is my crazy train going to end? And you can't make your crazy train end, because this is not the point. It's also really compassionate, because it also means that we kind of need to find our technique, as it were. Not that we're inventing a technique, but have faith in ourselves, in the fact that this is inevitable, right? This will happen. And then there's the wisdom part that arises afterwards, right? As a result of watching my own mind settle. Maybe it's taken me 6 months to be able to settle, at such and such a rate. And then there's the non-projecting piece of this too, right? Like just because something is happening now does not mean anything necessarily in terms of how we plot ourselves on the kind of slide of Mahamudra realization, full-blown samsara. So in one way it's radical, in one way it's anathema to the way that we have created this life or interact in this kind of these cultural settings. But ultimately also like how powerful and deeply restful to be able to give ourselves permission to let go. Like the low-grade fever of myself constantly plotting these kinds of existential plot points around my experience of phenomenon. All of that energy loss doesn't really do me any good, right? It just kind of builds this kind of tension, this stress. And then there's fear when we try to let go, right? We try and disengage, we let go, we try to release it, we experience this kind of fear. It's interesting, because this is where it also gets very weird. If you begin to kind of think about it, the Mahamudra process, so to speak, is happening right now too, because you're taking in, there's no like line, right? It's not like we're not focusing on awareness now. Awareness is part of it, right? So this Mahamudra flashes, can happen even while practicing Shine, right? There's no permission line that you need to cross. Oh, do I have permission to practice Lakdong? Oh, do I have permission to practice both together to experience Mahamudra? Sometimes it just pops. But it's interesting, isn't it? Like non-reactivity in this. That's a really good the applicability, we could say, is pretty fast. Yeah, Eric.
Yeah, so that includes that if you do shamatha on an object, that well, you have these flashes of the spaciousness growing, and that, for me at least, is very tricky, because then the tendency is to focus on that and go away from the object on which you initially try to focus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what to do? My tendency is to go back to the object, but it's hard sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, returning to the object is good, and then there's also the simultaneity of both happening at once, which I think can happen as well, where there's this experience of the spaciousness and maybe this kind of like overarching kind of stretching out, so to speak, of what is happening while simultaneously being focused on the object as well, right? The focusing on an object is, we can say, it doesn't need to consume all of the energy that's happening in the moment. Whoops. It's just a light it's just a light occurrence, like those bubbles, right? So it's just a very light have you ever been fishing? I know Buddhists aren't supposed to fish, yeah. They're definitely not supposed to fish. I don't fish often, but when I get a chance, I enjoy it. And what's really one of the reasons why I enjoy it is because, like, when you can feel a fish, like, just kind of like, even just like brushing up against the hook, it's amazing to feel the little vibration that goes up the fishing line to the rod, and the lightest movement of your hand will spook the fish. And I feel like it's very similar with meditation, where really we're trying to be in such subtle harmony with what is happening, and especially with respect to Shine, it's harmony with respect to being anchored on the physical object, but then there's awareness, there's sound, there's so much is happening all at one time, to just lightly let the whole thing, try to let everything happen at once, is quite a beautiful thing. But it can be hard, definitely. Larry, how are you?
I'm well, Lama Justin, thanks. Barbless hooks. That's the key to fishing.
Oh, say it again?
Barbless hooks.
Yes. Yes.
If there are no barbs, then the fish, while spooked, may not hurt. But
Exactly.
yeah, so my question, I found that when I was trying to do the pure object, that there was the initial anxiety, which always comes up for me with visualization. Am I getting this right? Do I, and I could relax through that.
Mhm.
But then underneath that, I found like a resistance, like, I don't really want to do this.
Sure.
So then I switched over to a white eye inside a 5-color Tigley, and I was able to relax into that without trying to do the form of the Buddha.
Mhm.
Is that okay, or should I try to push through the relax through the resistance?
No, it's okay. So, what we're going to do, we're going through all of these different classical styles of practicing Shine. However, for example, like eighth Karmapa points out, and a lot of other people do as well, that you don't have to master all of these. If there's one or if there's two that are reliable, to settle in onto those. Um, so, for example, like one of the kind of last one in terms of Shine is anchoring the mind on mind itself. So being very aware of one's own mind and noticing thoughts if they're coming or not coming, right? Sensation. I really like that one. And there's some other forms sometimes of focusing on breath, and I've never really particularly enjoyed that. So although we'll go through all of these, you don't have to, just go with what feels good. You technically just need one way of settling the mind, and then you're good. And the other thing too, it's like we're not going to go to hell if somehow we hybridize two of these steps, right? If it works for you, be creative and just listen to that. Yeah, Anne.
Muted. With the pure object, after if you are visualizing something here, then sometimes the visualization isn't there, but the feeling is there.
Mhm.
So I didn't, as long as the feeling was there, I didn't really bother with the visualization. I don't know what the distinction is, but it just seemed easier to sit with the feeling.
Yeah, that's fine too. So if you visualize like a Tiglet, like a little dot here, after some point, it almost as if there's this ghost sensation of it being there, or something on the crown of the head. There can be this, again, this kind of ghost sensation of something being there. Just focus on that if that feels good.
Yeah, no, that was just my question. That was all, because I mean, it creates another sensation, and also that the mind of Mahamudra sits in the background anyway, doesn't it? So you can get breakthrough because that's just how it is.
Yes, very well put. Yeah, it's not as if later we open a door and then like a cat, Mahamudra kind of walks in, right? It's been here the whole time. Yeah, absolutely.
As long as it's got the right chip.
See, yeah, you're finishing us off. Now we'll get to in the series. Go to the bar. Good. Excellent. It's a good name for a cat, Mahamudra. Oh, what about for a dog? No, it's too dog. It's too much slobber. Mahamudra's clean.
No. You only get a chihuahua through your cat door anyway.
A chihuahua named Mahamudra. That's perfect. There you go. Oh, very good. Good. Well, maybe we'll pause here. Just looking down in my calendar. So, next week we won't have the session because Dr. Nita will be joining the spiritual formation program Tuesday. And then on the 30th, I will be coming back from Mexico. So we'll resume on February 6th. Until then, everybody take really good care of yourselves. May your practice be smooth and good and lovely. And See you in February. Be well. Take care.
All right.
Bye bye.